Joining us, Richard Oliver, always a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here. A lot to talk about today.
A lot to talk about. It's been an exciting month of September. The Astros have been on fire all this month. They had that 7-game winning streak at the start of the month, and they have not stopped since.
They haven't. You know, a lot of people, when you look at the Astros, the expectations coming into the season were so high because they won a world championship last year. And then they kind of muddled along during stretches of the season, and you kind of had the perception they weren't playing very well or that they weren't as good as they were last year. Well, you know what? Here we are at this stage of the season. The record's better. A lot of things are better about this team than last year at this time. So cautious optimism as we head toward the postseason.
Cautious optimism. What do you attribute to this success this past month? We've talked about the healthiness of players getting back on this roster. How much did that impact this month?
It did impact things. I think it impacted the erratic play there for a while. But the thing that's really carried the Astros, of course, is the play of Alex Bregman, who put himself into the MVP race with the way he's been hitting the ball. But the overarching strength for the Astros has been that pitching staff. It's been absolutely outstanding. The second half of the season, not only the starting pitching, but the relief pitching in particular, which has been a little bit of a bugaboo in the first 2-3 months of the season. But down the stretch here, they have been outstanding. A couple of blips on the radar, but overall, this is as good as it gets. And there's no team going into the playoffs that has a better bullpen. And a lot of times that will carry you a long way.
Another factor that has helped the Astros the last couple of weeks, the athletics have kind of dropped off a little bit. They took a loss to the Angels, a couple more losses along the way. How much has their play impacted the Astros?
Well, I think, one of the things that's pretty interesting was the Astros have been pushed along by the Angels, of course, here in the second half of the season, or the A's, I should say, and the A's were not going away, and that was what's interesting. So I think in a way that was a little bit of a positive. It was a wake-up call. It kept the Astros alert. They had to kind of keep an eye on the standings as opposed to last year. But the other thing that's kind of interesting is the Astros, in turn, put the pressure on the A's. I mean, the A's, the one thing about finishing as a wild card team, of course, it's until they change it, it's a one-game playoff. You're in the wild card. The A's, it looks like, are going to play at New York probably in the one-game wild card. And if you have a bad day, if something doesn't go your way, if you're not playing at home, all those different things, it really can hurt you. And I think the A's were feeling the pressure. And to be fair, they were in an unexpected spot all the way through this year. A lot of young players on that team.
You mentioned a little bit of the playoff picture. If the playoffs were to end today, who would the Astros be facing? What would that look like?
The Astros would be hosting the Indians. I mean, the Indians have won the American League Central. In fact, they, like the Astros last year, they clinched it a while back. They played such terrific baseball. Terry Francona always has that team playing so well. So the Astros and Indians would face off. The dynamic there would be going back to the pitching. Both of these teams have the two best pitching staffs in the American League, without a doubt. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be a scrum to see who can win those series. The other series, we talked about the wild card, of course, would be the A's playing at the Yankees. And then the Boston Red Sox are waiting for whoever wins that wild card game. They have the best record in baseball. We can argue about whether they're the best team in baseball, but they do have the best record of baseball. They'll wait to play either the Yankees or the A's in the first round.
3 series left for the Astros, the Angels, Orioles, and the Blue Jays. 7-game away stand to end the season. What do the Astros need to accomplish in these final series?
Well, it's interesting because I think they're already trying to look at some different things, because what they've got to accomplish now is their playoff roster.
Okay.
And what's interesting, I was at the Astros game last weekend, and the discussion with some of the folks on site was, they've got to establish that roster. You've got your 40-man expanded roster for September, of course. They're going to have to trim it down to your playoff roster. How many catchers do you take into the playoffs? How many pitchers? Keep in mind, the Astros have a lot of players who were on the playoff roster last year that will not be on it this year.
Wow.
I mean, when you look at Evan Gattis and the way he has not played in the second half, I think he's a bubble guy. I mean, Jake Marisnick is back and he's healthy. He's defensively such a good guy. But it's the pitching staff. We talk about how good the Astros are at pitching. They are so deep. I think Will Harris, I think Chris Davinsky, I think Lance McCullers, who's been injured. All those guys played major roles in the playoffs last year. I'm not sure they make the playoff roster this year because the Astros are so deep in pitching and have so many fine arms there.
Well, we'll have to find out. They have a big task ahead of them for that. Richard, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure.
You're watching Sports Tonight, San Antonio's only nightly 30-minute sportscast with exclusive sports coverage you won't find anywhere else.